Hello there, it's Jan here at JB Crafts. Welcome back to the channel. I have another project in my little September stamp with me collection today, and this one's a concept style card, and again a really easy one to make, to be honest, but packs a bit of a punch. Now, it's a considered make, this one, because I always think it's hard to package. I've actually created this sort of dome shape. Again, not my design. These are out there on the internet, on YouTube, and it's just one piece of card that's actually bowed round, so it makes it quite a decent depth. So from the point of gifting it to someone, it's not one that you would probably want to put in the mail. It's approximately 2 inches deep on the card, so you could make a box to sit it in. Or alternatively, I would sort of use this more as a gift and maybe wrap it in tissue to hand deliver it to someone like that, rather than trying to fit it inside something. And all it is literally, this piece of card is bigger than the back piece, and then I've used my arch dies to create an aperture. This can be any shape. You could put a rectangle in here if you don't have dies that you could cut with a craft knife and a ruler, or a square. It could be anything that you've got. Some of the really nice nesting dies look nice in it. I've used a couple of these arch ones to get the, you know, the sort of the border around it, and I'm going to show you how I've done that. And my stamping today consists of just stamped images today with minimal colouring, so it doesn't have to be fancy blended colouring all the time. And then I've used a beautiful text stamp just to create my own sort of background here in the, and this is the piece that we've cut out of the front, so utilising that. I've gone down that sort of turquoisey teal route today, but again, you know, you can do any colour scheme, any theme, as always with these. And again, you know, the ethos of the channel, dig into your stash, see what you've got, and see, you know, if you want to replicate something like this, you may not have this particular, you know, stamp set, but I'm sure you've got something similar. It may be that you want a different colour scheme. As I say, I've done mine as a birthday wishes. I've got you deserve a very special day, and then on the back I've just popped another piece on the back just to write a message if you're sending it, you know, to send it to your recipient. So yeah, very, very simple to do. It involves a couple of pieces of cardstock, some die cutting and some stamping today. So I'm going to show you the sizes for the card to start off with. We need 2 pieces of card. And our background piece, my card, the dimensions of the back here are 7 3/4 inches tall by 5 3/4 inches wide, which is not a standard size. You can make these, you know, you could make it a 7 by 5. I just wanted a nice area to play in, and if you're gifting it to someone hand delivered and you're not worried about putting it in an envelope, you can make them pretty much any size you want. So I sort of opted on that. So that's going to be my back piece, and then the front piece wants to be wider, so it's the same height. I've got the 7 3/4 inch height, but I've gone for 8 inches across. Now, an inch of that is going to be the tabs. We're going to score it in a second to make the tabs at a 1/2 inch, which leaves me with 7 inches. So it's just over a couple of inches bigger than the back piece. So that was going to give us that room to actually curve this and create that bow front. So I'm going to put the back piece to one side for a second. We'll come back to that later. I'm just going to bring my scoreboard in, and all I want to do is make a glue tab at each side of here, and I'm literally going to score it at 1/2 inch, okay, and then I'm going to go over to the other side and score it at 7 1/2. So I've just made a 1/2 inch tab on each side of this, and I have actually marked my center point here. So while I'd got it in my scoreboard at 8 inches, I've just made a little mark top and bottom at the 4 inch mark, so that I know whereabouts to center my die to cut the aperture. So what we're going to do then is just fold and burnish those edges. Let me just get rid of that piece now. And we are going to pop this through the die cutting machine, so I will need to reinforce these when it's been through the machine. So I'm going to pop those in now so that we can see where we're working, and we want to use our dies in this particular section. Now, my arch dies are from Hunky Dory, They're the Moonstone range, they're die cutting range, and they are just arched window dies. I love these. The largest one in here is, let me just give you a measurement on those, because I'm going to use the largest one and the next one in. So the largest one is 6 inches tall, and then the next one is just about 5 5/8, and we're going to use those first two, and the width on it is 6 by 4. So I've got my two out that I want to use, which are that first and second one off the set here. So let's just pop those to one side for a minute, because we don't need that packet. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut an aperture into the front of the card. Now I want the inside one to be the smallest one, and then we're going to use the larger one to cut the pattern paper to go round it. And all that's done is expose part of the card base here to save actually making another frame to stick on top. So we're going to use the smaller one of the two. So I'm going to pop that one to one side for a minute, and we're going to put this in the centre. So I've got a tiny little mark on my die here. If I'm ever doing this, I've just got a pencil mark on the die here where the centre is. And I want to come down, I've marked about 3/4 of an inch so that I can get this position correctly. And then we need a couple of bits of double-sided tape. And all I'm going to do is line up this one with that line I've made on here. And I'm just going to push it up to where I've got that little mark at the top there. Just make sure that we're running parallel at both sides. And once I'm happy with that, we're going to stick that in place like so. So I'm going to bring in my Gemini plates here. And I am, for this one, because of my sizings, I am going to use my larger plates on this one. So I'm going to open those side pieces up again, and this will fit now on my large plate. Pop my cutting plates on top there, and we'll pass this through my Gemini, which just sits behind me here on the desk behind me. And I'm just going to wait while that's passed through the machine. There we go. And yeah, some of you picked up in the past, I've still got this is from my original, well, my Gemini is the original machine. And when it first, if any of you use the Gemini, you'll know that when it first came out, it had the dyed purple plate in here. And this one has been phenomenal. Just look, you know, I still use this one as my base plate. I have got a slightly different configuration in my sandwich, which I have talked about before. Instead of my plastic shim, I use one of my double-sided plates. So if I've got anything just like an outline die, it doesn't need as much pressure. If I'm cutting something detailed, I will pop the proper plastic shim back in. But I find for mine, this one works pretty well. So you can see there that that's taken that piece out of the middle perfectly. Now I am going to need those again in a second. We're going to take this away gently, and I'm going to reuse this one. This is the piece that we're going to stamp with the background. This is now going to fit in here. This is the bit that we're going to put the text stamp on. So I'm going to keep that one handy. And we can get rid of the smaller die now. We don't need that one. I'll pop that back up there for a second. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the paper that I've got to mat it with. And I've just chosen some polka dot paper here in a teal colour. And I've gone round the edge of this. You know that I like to ink everything just with a corresponding ink, a coordinating colour, all the way around the edge. And we're going to do that round the aperture as well when we've cut it. So what I want to do now then is I'm going to put this underneath. No, I'm not. I'm going to put it on top, Jan. Let me just have a think. Yeah, I remember what I did. I was trying to work out how I did it, yeah. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it underneath, all right, because we've got just a slight border. So let me just give you the measurements. This one measures 7.5, so it's 1/4 of an inch less than the height, and 6 3/4, which is 1/4 of an inch less than the width. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position that on the back so that I've got a nice border all the way around that inside. So I'm inside the score lines here. And I just want to position it so that I've got a border all the way around. And then when I'm happy with that, we're going to turn that over. Okay, that doesn't look straight. Have I moved it? I found this was the easiest way to get everything lined up. Okay, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a tiny little bit of my double-sided tape on the back of here, and I'm just going to pop this back in place for a second, like so, and then remove this one, and then I want the larger of the two dies. Now there might be another way of doing this. This is just how my mind works, and that is not straight. I can see that with the let's pop it there like that. The larger of the two dies, now I can pop this round the outside, where now that I know where that middle piece is, and you can see that I've just got a nice border all the way round here. So this is going to cut this one slightly bigger, which is going to expose the white on the card base. So we're going to stick that one in place, and then I'm going to remove this one out of the way, and then pass this one through my machine now. So I'm going to put this one on here now and just pop this one back through my Gemini. So put all the plates together. Just bear with me a second while that passes through the Gemini. There we go, that's just back through there. Yep, get that out of there. And I do normally have a lot of stuff prepped, but I wanted to show you how I actually lined all this up to get it in position. So I think we've done with the plates now. We can put those back over there. And now we should have that perfect position to actually put this on top around our design. So we've finished with the dies. They can go back up there for a second. Okay. So again, this one's actually spare. I didn't use this. I did consider popping it underneath this one, but you couldn't really see it in the back. So this is spare. I will use this probably on another card somewhere at some point in time. So I'm going to pop that over there out of the way. And when we bring this one back in now, we've got that perfect panel to go on here that we can centre in between our score lines, and we've got that nice shaping round it. So I'm just going to rub away any of my pencil lines now with my pencil eraser, just so that they're not showing through any of the design. And then before I pop this together, I'm going to use my ink pad, and these Spectrum Noir ones, this pigment ink, have got a foam pad on the top, so they're just like a giant foam applicator. I love these for this. I just use the whole pad and just go around it as if you've got a giant foam applicator, and they apply that ink beautifully, and it just finishes off that edge, in my opinion. Now, you know, I've said before, this stage is optional. If you're not bothered about the inking, you don't have to do this. I just like the finish on it. Excuse me. Oh, dearie me. Yep, so just all the way around there, and then we'll pop that to one side, and we're going to stick this one now over the top. So I'm just going to grab some of my glue here. In fact, we can probably use the all-purpose glue for this one. Just get that one going. So on the back of here now, this is just going to stick over that panel. So I'm just going to add a little bit all the way around the edge here. Make sure that we've got contact with all of the paper around the aperture, and then we can pop that one in place. So I'm going to pop it on the panel. Something still doesn't look quite straight. I don't know what happened there, but we will work with it. I don't know what wasn't straight. It's not too bad. I'm just going to wriggle that into place. This is where the wet glue comes in handy. Yeah, I moved this because I didn't think it was straight, and now it does look a little bit wonky, so forgive me for the positioning. If I was making this for someone, I would definitely have to redo that, but we'll go with it for now. Yeah, this is not quite, I moved it because it didn't look straight on the paper. maybe it's the paper that I haven't cut straight and it threw me with the polka dots. So we'll leave that one just to dry for a second, and then I'm going to bring in that back piece again. Just excuse me a second. I just need to give my nose a quick blow. There we go. And we're going to bring that back piece back in now. So this one's going to wrap around and stick on the back of there. So I've made my matte layer to go on the back like so. And this one measures a quarter of an inch smaller again. So we've gone from 7 3/4 to 7 1/2. And 5 3/4 to 5 1/2. And all I've done is use a scrap that I cut off that original polka dot paper to go across the back, and I've got that in place. So we're going to add some glue to the back of that one, and I'll use this one seeing as I've got it here. I've still not got my glue. I keep going on about needing to put a glue order in, an adhesive order, and I've been so busy this week with other things that I've still not got it done. So I am literally using the last bits of my all-purpose glue. I'm being quite sparing with it at the minute. I normally use it on most of my projects, but you'll have noticed that I've been using the acrylic glue and the double-sided tape. I really must get round to sitting down and putting an order in. So that's my background, and then we're going to stamp up this bit to go in here. All right, so let's just pop the lid on that for a second. I'm going to leave that one to dry as well, and then bring in my stamp positioner, which has got all sorts of random bits of stamping on here. I normally change this out, but I've got goodness knows how many. I think that's the cleanest side. I can feel some what feels like embossing powder on there. So let's just do that one for now. In fact, no, that's just actually taking away from what I'm doing. Let me grab a clean piece of, and I just put copier paper. I've got my gorgeous little pad in here, but I don't want to waste it, so I just put a piece of copier paper underneath, just to catch any over stamping, because this one will actually go over the edge. So I pop that in here. I'm going to position this right in the middle because the stamp is slightly bigger, and I've still got that little tiny bit of low tack tape on the back. So we can pop that in here, try and make sure that it's running reasonably straight. And then my script stamp, again, this is just one out of my stash. It's a really nice one. It's an Old Crafters Companion collection called Classic Script from the Nature's Garden Lily collection, and it's a really nice all over just generic script stamp. So I'm going to take that one out of the packet, and we're going to put this on as a background just in black and white. So I want to keep this in place, and we'll use the magnet to just keep that in place. And then I'm just lay this over the top so that we've got that text running pretty much all across there, and I can line that up. I'm just looking at the base of my die cut piece with the text. Now then, this one keeps getting in the way. Let me just take that one out for a second. Pick that up with the Misty Door, and then I'm just going to use my black pigment ink for this and get a nice crisp finish on here. Now that's better. If ever you get areas of your stamps that haven't stamped properly, just check that you've not got any air bubbles underneath them, because sometimes that can be the reason why they don't connect properly with the paper. So I'm just going to put a layer of that ink. It's a nice solid black, this one. Make sure there's plenty on there. Close that over my little panel, and then just bring in my pressure tool. Give that a good even press, and then we'll leave this one to dry. Because it's a pigment ink, it does take a couple of minutes for that ink to dry off. And then you've got absolutely gorgeous background paper, making your own background paper. So I am just going to give my stamp, as always, a quick wipe with my cloth. That's usually most that they get, unless it's a permanent ink that I need to get off there. We'll leave that in there for now. I can lift this one off here because it's just the low tack. Okay, and we've got our own background piece. I'm going to leave that one to dry as well for a second. Pop the lid on the ink, and then we're going to come to the actual stamping part of it. So the series was Come and Stamp With Me, and again I've had a rummage through my stash, and this is the one that I pulled out. This again is Crafter's Companion. As you know, I used to work for the company, so a lot of my stash is their product, and you know, I intend on using it in between my own sort of things that I integrate with it. Again, look through the stash. This was from a collection of 12 months of floral stamps. It was birthday month florals, and each month has its own design. Now I absolutely love any kind of daisy type flower. I love the asters, they're one of my favorites, along with peonies, and this just happened to be April, which is coincidental. I just wanted the daisies, and in here these were sets of die cut and stamps, and they are a nice size to work with. So I've got that lovely double daisy, and I've already stamped these ahead and done a little bit of work on these, and I've used the small one. So you can see that beautiful double daisy here, and we're going to do some minimal colouring on that. And then the little one I've just used as a accent to offset it. Now I did use sentiments from a different one because these were very small for the size of my project, but it did come with sentiments as well. And then you also get the dies to cut out a lot of those elements. So I've used the main die here, and I've actually stamped and cut out my daisies, and I'm just going to show you how I've quickly added some colour to this to create that definition. And then I've also done and prepared the little ones here in the same colour. So I've got a couple of those ready as well. And I've used the 2 die cuts to cut those out. The dies, they're the die cuts, Jan. Those are the dies. So put that to one side. And again, these were very, very simple. I've just selected 4 different colours in my alcohol markers this time, and I stamped with an alcohol proof ink so that the line art doesn't bleed. And these are actually on it was watercolor paper. I don't normally use watercolor paper for alcohol markers, but it was just some scraps that I'd got lying around, and I didn't need a lot. So yeah, you can apply it to these. They're a little bit more thirsty, the watercolor card, because it's meant for absorption. So I wouldn't do any large area of colouring on watercolor because it's going to absorb your ink unnecessarily. So I've just gone for 4 colours, keeping it really simple. I've got a dull green shade, which I've added to those stems, which is minimal. Okay, and then I've gone for a grey. So I've actually got ice grey, and I've got antique blue. And this is all I've used to create the depth on those petals. So I'm going to start with the grey. Okay, and pick a petal to start with, and where the line art is on here, I'm just going to flick that light grey, and this dries really pale, but I'm coming out from the centre of the petals here, using that line art as a guide for the shading, and just flicking out some little pieces of that grey ink. If you've got pens that have the brush tips on, they're great for this kind of technique. But I do actually like the bullet nibs. So again, all the way around. And can you see how I'm turning the artwork rather than trying to get in and do the different angles? I find that upward stroke like that for flicking is comfortable. So turn the artwork to make it meet your sort of demand. And just finish all the way around on that inside of the petals. We're going to do a little bit on the outside afterwards. Okay, now you might want to leave it at that if you just want a really hint of subtle colour, but I wanted it to go a little bit darker, so I've got my vintage blue, and I'm going to go around and do the same again, but I'm not going to cover quite as much this time. So I've still got a bit of the grey showing. I just want that blue right down at the base of the petals where any colour would be more concentrated. So exactly the same technique, but not quite as far reaching as what the grey did. Turning that artwork around again, just going over the line art on the stamp, and just adding that sort of deeper shade, focusing on the inside there where the petals come out from the centre of the flower, like so. Not going to do any blending at all, that's all I'm going to do. And then I'm going to bring the grey one back in again, And I'm going to come in from the top of the petals this time. There's a little bit of shade in here as well. So again, I'm just going to have it at an angle that I can work with. And where that little bit of line art is again, I'm just going to add a tiny bit of the grey, just to suggest a little bit of shaping on the edge of the petals. And if there isn't any line art on them, I haven't done it. These have all got a little bit on the edge here. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do. Again, no blending, absolutely no blending. And then I picked out lemon yellow or light yellow. And again, the centre of the daisy, I am just going to add a layer of the lightest shade. I'm going to come right to the dark and go over where the dots are, just to add a bit of depth. And then I've actually pulled out one of my glitter gel pens. This is just a gold one. And all I'm going to do is dot this, just make sure it's working, yep, over where those dots are, to add some more sort of intense colour and just a tiny, tiny little bit of sparkle. It's very minimal, but because it's a glitter pen, it's just adding both the definition, and when it's dry there is just a tiny, tiny touch. I can see this off camera here. Okay, so that's going to be my main focal point. Now we are going to need some foam pads, so I'll get some of those out, and I'm going to use my tool here to just gently, because the card's going to be domed, I want to just gently bring some shape in. I'm trying to avoid that glitter pen, it'll not be dry yet, into this so that it curves around the shape of the card and it doesn't just lie flat on it. And then we'll add some foam pads to that one. I've done the same with these, and I've got some little foam pads on the back of these ready, so that's my embellishments good to go. So let's pop the card together. We've got this bit should have been drying nicely, and again what I'm going to do is I'm going to position this in the back here with about an equal distance at either side. So we want to get this lined up, and there's about 3/4 of an inch at either side, and I'm just going to use that as a guide. She says moving it, so again just pop it like so, and I'm going to get that as a guide to pop this one in the back. Okay, so I'm going to use that same glue again, and I think I've just moved it again, trying to pick it up. There we go. It's only a guideline because obviously they're not going to line up because of the curvature. So let's get rid of the little piece of tape. That did its job. We're going to add a bit of glue on the back of there, and then just drop that into the aperture. Because we cut it out of there, it'll just drop back in, and we can see there. But I do need to, there's definitely something not straight on that front panel. So I just want to get that nice and straight in the background, give that a press down, and then I'm going to flick over to my acrylic glue, and we're going to pop this one on. So I'm just going to reinforce those score lines because we passed it through the die cutting machine, and then this is going to fold around the back. Okay, so I want to put my glue on the inside of the tab. So I'm going to flick to this one just because it dries faster than the all-purpose glue, and I want that quick grab on here. You could use tape here if you wish. I'm just going to run some of that down that inside there, and then this one wants to tuck right in up to the score line, but far enough away that you can fold it round the edge here. So make sure that everything's lined up when it comes around, and then I'm going to apply some pressure to that one so that that glue does its job. And then once we've got that one secure, I'm going to create a little bit of shape now on this one. And all I want to do from here is just run my tool under here, just to encourage that little bit of curvature as we go around. You see how it's helping it to bow and curve, and I'm going to do the same at the top. Could probably have been better off doing this before I stuck it down, but we're just going to give it a little bit, just tease those fibres in the card just a fraction there so that we get that bit of curvature, and then we're going to stick this one onto here and you get that natural dome effect. So again, I want the glue on the inside of the tab, so I'm just going to run my glue, turn it round so that we can see it, down the inside again here, and then again I'm going to pop the edge of the card up to that score line, push it into that score line and just wrap it around the edge there, making sure that everything's lined up with the top and bottom. And then once you've got it in place, we can add that pressure again until that glue's done its job, like so. And then you get that natural curvature, and you can just tease that card into shape. So I've got a little bit more curve on one side than I have the other, and you get that lovely dome shape there, really easy to create. And once you know how that works, it's really quite simple then to adjust sizes of this accordingly. We've got the paper in the background that we created, so we just need to embellish now with our stamps. So this one's going to go on the side here like so, but before that I'm going to pop my sentiment on, and I've just created a little birthday wishes banner. I've just cut this out with one of my little banner dies here, and we're going to pop this on the front like so. So I want to stick that one down before we do anything else so that I've got that in position. And you can see where I've stamped on the other side and didn't like the stamping, so we've turned it over. A piece of card's got two sides. And then I want to get this sort of in the centre, and I want about the same distance from each side there. So I've got just about an equal part here. Make sure that that one's running nice and straight. And then I'm going to pop my daisies on, so that now that I know where that sentiment's going to sit, I want this one to come down just towards it. So I only need to put foam pads under that side there. So I'm just going to grab a couple of these and pop them along that side like so, and then one on that top edge. Okay, I am going to run just a tiny bit of glue on that outside edge here, just so that it catches. Take off my liners on there, and then we're going to position this one just down the side here, and I want the stems to come to the bottom, and I don't want it to go off the edge of the card. So I'm going to sort of line it up with the edge of the card there, and then just pop that one down onto there. Oops. Okay, you see now how that curve follows the shape of the card. And then I'm going to do the same with these two at the top. We're actually going to put these ones across so that we've got an opposite just to tie it all together. So just because I've got those little ones in there, these are just going to fit on this top edge here like so, and I've just put my smaller foam pads under those on the part that's going to stick to the card. And then this one's going to go up there as well. So we've got that cluster of three just overlapping slightly. We've got our large element and the two small ones there. And then I wanted something to go in the back just to sort of tie it all together. So I've stamped out, again, just from my stash, I've got birthday wishes, you deserve a very special day. And I've inked around the edge of this with that same turquoise ink, and I've just rounded the corners off to echo the curve part. And then I wanted to put this one in the back here. And then again, thought process, because we've got black sentiment on black background, just to lift it a tiny bit, and this is just out of the scrap, I've just got my little banner punch again and punched a bit of the background paper that was left, and all I'm going to do is pop that underneath just to lift it away from that background. So I'm just going to have a little bit of that popping out from the bottom there, and it's enough to just lift it off that background there, and then we can stick that one down. So again, I'm just going to drop this one from the top of the card here. I want it to be sort of reasonably high up, and I'm going to use the script text to try and ensure that that's straight. That was pretty good. Okay, press that down, and that blue's just lifted it slightly away from that background, and then the blue ink around it. So that's the majority of that finished. I had got a couple of little brads out, and I'll show you the original one rather than popping these in here, because I don't always keep the second samples. There's a limit to how much space I've got. So you can see there that we've got the bulk of it done. We've just got those finishing touches, and you know what's coming next. Okay, so if I bring this one in, I've put the brads through here. So I went with the black to link the script in the background and the stamping that I'd done for the sentiments. I've got two black brads that I've just fastened through onto the inside. Then I added some extra little black pearls. You know the story behind that. They've all got to have it. And then I went a bit mad, and I've got some turquoise ones on the background as well, just because I can. And what I had done to this, and I've forgotten to do that, and it's sat right in front of me, just to link the yellow in, I actually used my Distress Spritz. I love this. The fossilized amber just comes out the most gorgeous yellow gold colour, and you can just see in the back there over that stamped panel, I just use my splatter brush to just pop some splats of this. I didn't use the spritzer, I just popped a bit of this out and used the splatter brush just to prop some little bits of gold to link it to the centres of the flowers, because that was the only yellow gold on there. But you can just see how that picks up the light. I forgot about that on this one. So yeah, that was sort of a finishing touch. And then just finally, I've got a tiny bit of silver thread that I've just put on a dab of glue and just tied it to the stem again, just to bring in another sort of element there. And then that back piece on the back, there was a gap between the two sides that had folded in. So I just measured the gap, and I've created a piece of cardstock at that size. So we're looking at 7.5 by 4 3/4 piece of card. Again, if you want to do this straight onto the back of the card, you could do this part before you stick it together and use the back of the actual card. I've just stamped my sentiment. This was in the stamp set. I've got those two little tiny daisies here that again just link it to the front. I've done the same kind of colouring on them, and then I've inked around the edge with that turquoise to bring it all together, and that's where I would write my sentiment on the back there. So those finishing touches, then we just had the brads, the gems, the little silver bow, and then our sentiment on the back. And like I said at the top of the video, if you'd not caught it there, I would make this for one that I was going to hand deliver to someone. You could make a box, you could make a nice deep box to sit this in and pop a little bit of tissue inside it just to protect the shape. So just crumple up some tissue and pop it inside just to protect the shape if you wanted to. But I would sort of do this kind of style for one that I knew I was going to hand deliver, and I would probably wrap it in tissue paper like a gift rather than trying to fit it in an envelope. It won't fold flat, this one. A lot of the concept cards that I make, the idea is that they fold flat, but this one is quite a speciality one, and it stays in its shape. It stands up beautifully. There's different ways of doing this. You can actually do it with the wings on the side as well, which I may extend this to in a future video. But yeah, you can have it where you've got the side panels at the side, and this one fastens to slightly differently. So yeah, there's different ways of doing it, and you could actually, if you wanted to, make this into a book card on the back. So you could have your usual card on the back that opens, and that way you would be able to put your sentiment inside as normal. So lots of variations on it, but that's my domed card for today. with that beautiful stamping in there. Very, very minimal colouring on this one, because I know not everybody likes to do all that 3-pen blending. It can be a bit challenging, a bit daunting if you're just starting out your journey in craft. So yeah, very minimal colouring just to get that little bit definition in there today, and then stamping in the background just to create that background paper of our own. So I hope you've enjoyed that one today, something a bit different again. If you've enjoyed it, please consider giving it a thumbs up for me, and I will be back very, very soon with another tutorial for you. So I'll see you then. Bye for now.